I want to talk about what we're going to do today. So if you were here yesterday, we dyed several pieces of fabric with a turquoise dye. And in that yesterday's stream, I talked about the fabric, different types of fabric we'll be using. I talked about the dyes and explained about the dyes themselves and how they work. And then we dyed several different pieces of fabric. And the reason I dyed different fabric is I want to be able to show how the color looks just slightly different on each of the fabrics. Each of the fabrics will absorb the color just a little bit differently. Some will be a little bit brighter, some will be a little duller, but they all look good, so that's not an issue. So I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and get started. I'm going to switch over to the overhead camera, and I have the pieces here. They've been sitting overnight. The dye has to sit on the fabric for at least 4 hours, and I'm using a turquoise color, and the blues is a good idea to let the blues sit overnight if you can, because they take a longer amount of time before they permanently bond with the fabric. So these have been sitting overnight in my laundry room because my studio is too cold for them. They have to remain at room temperature. So let's go over here to the overhead camera. Oh, by the way, how is the audio? I'm using another a mic instead of the audio from the computer. And let me know how that is. Is it staticky or is it good for you? So yes, I had some feedback from yesterday that when I went over to the overhead camera, the audio was a little bit iffy. So I've got a lapel mic clipped to my shirt, and so let's go over here to the audio, to the camera. It's perfect. The audio is perfect. Good. Thanks, Sue. So let's go over here and I'll put this aside, and these are the pieces that we dyed yesterday. So I've got 7 pieces, and what we're going to do today is rinse them out. I have several different cottons, a rayon bamboo, and a couple different silks. So I'm just going to open these up, and I'll talk about the rinsing process. Thanks, Pat. I'm glad the audio's good. Kind of kept me awake last night trying to figure out how to make the audio better. So I've opened up all the containers here, and for the rinsing process, the first objective is just to get as much of this excess dye out of the fabric, because not all of the fabric won't necessarily absorb all of the dye, so you want to rinse out the excess. And I have 2 containers of water. The one you see here, this is cold water from the tap. And here in Kentucky, the cold water from the tap is cold. Okay? And if I go too fast and you need me to back up or you have any questions, let me know. So the first rinse is with cold water. And back in Florida, before I left, the water from the tap was not cold, so I would put ice cubes in it to make it cold. But the water here in Kentucky is cold. So what I'm going to do is take each of these pieces of fabric that I've dyed, and I'm going to swish it around into cold water, and then I'm going to move it to hot water. So the reason you want to go for cold or hot is, if you remember yesterday, I said the dyes have to work within a certain temperature range, and if it gets too cold, they stop working. By putting this in the cold water, it will take any excess dye that hasn't been absorbed by the fabric and make it inert. And the same thing with the hot water. Once I put it in hot water, any excess dye that's left over from the cold water rinse will become inert. And that helps the excess dye release from the fabric faster, plus it also stops it from back staining the undyed areas. So I hope that makes sense. And if you have any questions on that, please pop them in the chat, let me know. So I'm keeping an eye on the chat while I talk. So I'm just going to go ahead and open these up and put them in. And since they're all the same color, I can put them all into the same container. Not having as much white space as I hoped on some of these. So either the fabric absorbed the dye really good or I put too much dye on. Okay, now this one has, and this is funny, this is the one that I expected to absorb the dye the most. So I'm going to leave these for just a second while I move all of this stuff out of the way. And you notice I'm wearing gloves, and that's so that I don't stain my hands. I don't need to walk around with turquoise hands. And I'm going to wipe down my table. I do have the table covered with plastic, so that my cloth cover underneath won't get stained with dye. I'm going to move that over, and now I'm going to bring over the hot water. And you can see how much dye that did not attach itself to the fabric. So I probably used a little bit more dye than I needed to yesterday. But now I'm just going to squeeze this out and bring it over here to the hot water. Okay, no questions so far? You guys still hear me? I'm assuming you can since no one said you can't. So for this cold water, you can see how much excess dye has been pulled out of the fabric. And look at the difference between the color of the cold water and the color of the hot water. So I do this several times. I don't do another cold water. You only need to do one cold water rinse. And I do several hot water rinses. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a minute and I'm going to empty this water, dump it out. Yes, Pat, I think I squirted too much dye on the fabric. I wanted a lot more white space than it's showing, so I could have probably used a lot less dye when I squirted on the fabric. So this water is, it's pretty much hot tap water. So I didn't heat it up or anything, but I've got this one bathroom where the water gets really hot. It's close to the hot water heater, so it gets really hot for me. So I'm going to go and dump this container of water, the cold water, and it is safe to dump this down the drain, so you don't have to do any special treatment. The dyes are safe to put in the drain. The soda ash treatment is pretty much in any powdered laundry detergent you use, so it's safe to go down the drain. So I'm going to I am going to step away for just a couple minutes. It shouldn't be a couple minutes, but I'll say a couple minutes. And I'll dump this and get some more hot water, and then I'll be right back, okay? So in the meantime, I'm just going to put on some music for you and go from here. I'll be back soon. Okay, I'm back. Can you guys hear me still? So I've dumped that water and I have a fresh batch of warm water, and I'll put my gloves back on and we'll transfer the fabric to the clean water. So in my studio here, unlike my studio in Florida where I had a huge laundry sink in the bathroom and I had another laundry sink available in the laundry room, I have no access to water here except for a small bathroom just outside the front of the door of my studio. So it's a challenge working with the dyes and what have you without access to water, but it can be done. So I'm going to switch back over to the overhead camera and we will continue to rinse this out. So I have a fresh batch of warm water. Put my gloves back on. And I'm just going to squeeze the excess water out of these containers and put it into fresh water. So this still got this second batch of water, the warm water, it got a little darker. And I only put soap in the first warm water rinse. You don't need to put soap in all of the warm water rinses. So I'm going to push this aside from this morning view. And I will do this several more times. So Pat asked, how do I know when it's rinsed enough? If I have a small amount of pieces or small pieces like this, I will just keep rinsing it until the water is almost clear. And sometimes that may take me 3 or 4 rinses. And usually on that final rinse, I like to leave it overnight because it'll just pull out as much water as it can. If I have larger pieces, after maybe about 3 or 4 rinses in the tubs like this, I'll throw it in the washer. Okay? And I always say rinse it till the water is almost clear, because if you're doing rinses like this in the tub, the water is never going to be totally clear. You'll have to put it in a washer to get it totally clear. And it's safe to put it in the washer. So I will probably do this several more times, but what I want to do now is I want to just put some of these on the table so you can see what they look like right now. When they're finally rinsed and dried, they're going to dry about 30% lighter than what you see now. So this piece, which is the one that I expected to absorb more dye, I expected this one to be totally solid because this is a pretty loose weave fabric. This is I know it's got a lot of cotton in it. I don't know for sure if it has any other fibers in it, but it's a loose weave drapery fabric, and it looks like it has the most white in it. So the white areas come from when the fabric was scrunched up and the dye didn't soak into those areas. So there's that one. And if you weren't here yesterday and you want to see where I talked about the fabrics and the different types of fabrics, be sure and watch the stream from yesterday, from Wednesday. So I believe this one is the muslin, the unbleached muslin. I really can't tell, but it looks like it. So I got some white, not as much as I wanted, but there's that one. And this is the silk broadcloth, and it soaked up a lot of dye. And silks do have a tendency to soak up a lot of dye. So you can see I don't have a whole lot of white here. But look at the color difference. Okay? Actually, all three of them are different in how the color looks on them. And this was all the same dye. For those of you who weren't here yesterday, these were all dyed with the same dye mixture. So that's those. So I'm going to take my gloves off. I need to feel the fabric. I need to feel it so I can know what it is. This is the rayon bamboo, I believe. So there's some white space here, but again, look at the color difference, all with the same dye. So Pat says she's going to ask about the color difference. It's all based on the fiber. Some fibers will absorb more of the color, some won't. And that's one reason why I'm doing this exercise, is so you can see how different fibers will react to the dye. But look at that, that's all, everything looks different. So, I've got a couple more here. Okay, this is my bleached muslin, and it does pretty good on taking up the color. So none of these are bad selections for the fabric for dyeing. It just depends on what your preference is. Do you like silk? Do you like rayon? Do you prefer cottons? Actually, this is a silk broadcloth, not this piece. I'm not sure. I think this piece is the silk habitai. So this is silk broadcloth, and that took the color pretty good. I either needed to scrunch these tighter or put less dye on it so that I would have more white space. And this is the last piece. I'm really having trouble telling what these fabrics are while they're wet. I'll be able to tell more when they dry. But this one, it's either silk or rayon. It's not a cotton. So there's some white space, not as much as I hope. So I know that I need to scrunch tighter or less dye. So I'm just going to put these back in the water and let them soak a bit. I'll change my water out several more times over the day. And what I'm going to do is, so you guys can see the final difference once everything is dried, I am going to take photos and put together a little bit of a slideshow video, and I'll put that up on my channel showing the finished pieces. Can I show this? You mean how they were scrunched, Pat? Pat asked, can I show the scrunch again? You want me to show how they were scrunched? Or how to do it? I'm assuming that's what you mean. So let me go back to the overhead camera. So when I'm doing a scrunch, all I do is I just start at the center and I just use my fingers to pull it up. And just pull it all up to the center. Now try not to get real big deep folds in it. And then I just scrunch it tighter and put it in the container. And I probably should have used a smaller container. Another thing I could have done is take some rubber bands and kind of wrapped it around it a bit so that it wouldn't loosen up as it was in the container, and that would have maybe given me some more white space. So that's what the scrunch looks like. So are there any other questions? So if I were putting these in the washer, I would just do a regular wash cycle. You know, whatever you like to start with, hot or cold. You don't really need to do hot. You could just do a cold wash cycle and just run it through a regular wash cycle if you want to put these in the washer. If I do put small pieces like this in the washer, I will take one of those lingerie mesh bags and put my pieces in the lingerie mesh bag. So that way they don't get all the strings, they don't start unraveling and get all the strings and get all twisted and tied up on itself. So those mesh bags really help with that. Any other questions? Okay, so like I said, I'll do a little slideshow. I'll let these run, so it's today's Thursday, so I probably won't get the slideshow up on my channel till Saturday. So I'll let these rinse out, sit overnight, rinse them several more times, and then tomorrow work on getting them pressed and photographed and make a video. So any questions? Well, I hope you guys come back next week, and my next week's streams will be on Tuesday and Wednesday. We tried Tuesday this week and had technical difficulties, so we went to Wednesday and Thursday. But Tuesday and Wednesday of next week, I'm going to be doing a process called itajime, which is folding and clamping of the fabric before you dye it, and you get some really, really great geometric patterns for that. So I'll give you a sneak peek of that in the Saturday video. How about that? Thank you, Susan. Sue, thanks. I'm so glad you could make it, and I really appreciate you taking your time to spend with me this morning. But if there's no other questions, you know, I can hang here for a few minutes, or if you don't have any questions, feel free to leave. But check out yesterday's video. It should be up on the channel now. If it's not under the videos tab, it'll be under the live tab. So be sure and check that out, because I went through a lot of information yesterday that would be really helpful for you to know. So I'll just hang here for a minute if anyone decides they wouldn't have any questions. If not, I'll see you hopefully next week. And be sure to check out the video on Saturday to see the results of the dyed pieces that we just rinsed out. Okay. Oh, Pat, I have a lot to do in the studio today, so I don't know about that. I will put on a little bit more clothes, maybe my field jacket. I was going to say field jacket. No, maybe my sweatshirt jacket. I've been back on our military base too long. I'm thinking about wearing military clothes. I don't own a field jacket anymore. So, although, you know, they are pretty warm, so I might have to get one. So Pat asked, where's my hat? I took it off, Pat. It sometimes gets in the way of my vision here. It's actually not too bad in here. I've kind of gotten a little bit used to it right now. So I'm going to go ahead and stop streaming. I hope you guys watch the video on Saturday, and I hope you come back next week on Tuesday and Wednesday to check out the itajime process. Okay? Bye. Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Sue.